Welcome to the overview for choice boards. Throughout the semester, there will be 6 choice boards submitted, 3 for the content area of science and 3 for the content area of social studies. These may be submitted in any order. For example, on the first week that a choice board is due, you may submit something from Group 1 of science. The next time a choice board is submitted, you may go ahead and submit another science choice board from either Group 2 or Group 3. You could submit all 3 sciences and then all 3 social studies. You could do every other. You could do 2 science, then a social studies. You may submit them in any order that you choose. You just need to make sure that you hit science groups 1, 2, and 3 and social studies groups 1, 2, and 3, which I will go into a little further in a moment when we look at the actual science choice board activities. Each choice board is worth 10 points for a total of 60 points. The points earned for your choice board are 30% of the SED 392 grade. Choice boards must be uploaded to ReggieNet by 8 a.m. on the assigned due date. Failure to upload on time will result in 0 points earned. Let's take a look at your options for the choice boards for science. If you look at the directions, it says choose 1 activity in each group from the choice board for a total of 3 activities to be completed. Once you've completed an activity, please highlight the activity selected and upload to ReggieNet. I will show you how to complete that on the rubric once we have gone over the options for choice boards for science and social studies. It should be noted that each activity that you design should be designed for your current classroom. Let's take a look at Group 1. The first activity in Group 1 is a concept map. In this activity, you're going to create a concept map or a web to show the relationship among the vocabulary terms. You should have 15 plus unit terms with visual supports. Group 1, second option is experiment. Design an experiment and show how you could use this experiment to fully include diverse learners in all steps of the process: inclusion, accommodations, modifications. Choose 1 learner in your room and describe how you would specifically adapt the experiment to fit their needs. The last option in Group 1 is to create a game to teach or reinforce skills or concepts being taught in a science unit. If we move over to Group 2, you will see that the first option is an observation. Complete a structured classroom observation in a science classroom. The second option is to create a STEM or STEAM activity. Design a STEM or STEAM activity that fit your learners' ability levels and align with grade appropriate standards. The third option is to design your own idea. Come up with your own idea to evidence science strategies or curriculum supports, modifications of a science assignment, or a test. Moving to Group 3, the first option is an interactive notebook or foldable. Create an interactive notebook or foldable to help learners systematically organize science content. The second option is academic language. Choose content-specific vocabulary for a science unit and create a PowerPoint, a Prezi, or other format with pictures to visually represent vocabulary. The last option is multiple intelligences. Create 3 varied approaches to help learners remember important concepts in a science unit using Gardner's multiple intelligences theory. Now let's go over the criteria for these choice board activities. Note at the top it says, if the following criteria is not appropriate for your site, please request supervisor permission prior to submission. Your supervisor will be the person who is grading these submissions. So if you have site-specific questions, it's best to ask them as they are more familiar with your site than Crystal or I are. We are more than happy for you to come to Rectangular Table 30 minutes prior to module beginning if you have general questions about choice boards that would benefit the group. So let's look at the criteria for Group 1. So the criteria for a concept map is 15 or more terms, 1 or more picture for each term. Make sure that the terms are connected and that there's a rationale on why you selected these terms. The second one is experiment. The criteria for experiment is to follow the scientific method, list materials, make sure that you have 10 strategies for inclusion, accommodations and modifications, the purpose, a lab worksheet, a rubric or assessment piece, and then choose a learner in your class and describe how you would specifically adapt the experiment to fit their needs. Going down to the last option is a game. The criteria for the game is including steps on how to play and win, materials, scoring directions, rules, incentive, objective, and then choosing a learner in your class and describe modifications to the game to meet their needs. Going to group 2, looking at the criteria for the observation, it must be a full class period. You must have it signed and dated by the teacher that you observed. Relate something that the teacher did during the class to one theorist. And you are going to use the initial structured classroom observation form, which we will go over later on in this video. And then also one standout area from domains 2 and 3 from the Danielson framework. What did the teacher do that really stood out to you in those 2 on-stage domains? The criteria for creating a STEM or STEAM activity. List the materials that are required, a connection to all aspects of STEM or STEAM, STEM being science, technology, engineering, and math, STEAM being science, technology, engineering, art, and math. A description of the activity or lesson and how it would be executed, and then a rationale for alignment to grade level standards and learners' ability levels. This would be connected to the next generation science standards. Lastly, in group 2, design your own idea criteria. You're going to choose an appropriate assignment or test, identify which accommodations or modifications you're addressing, modify it to your setting, and give support for decisions made, and provide the original and modified copies of the test or assignment that you are modifying. Group 3, interactive notebook and foldable. 8 to 10 pages or tabs. Every page needs at least one visual, a graph or a picture. Concise, paraphrase when necessary, and have key concepts. And then a reasoning plan for why you selected those tabs to be in your interactive notebook or foldable. Next is academic language. 15 words minimum with a picture for each word. One video, a PowerPoint, a Prezi, or some other format. Meaningful grouping. So make sure that the words are selected to tie into one chapter, topic, section, or etc. of your curriculum. Make sure that your presentation is neat, visually appealing, and concise, and give us a rationale on the terms that you selected. Lastly, the multiple modalities. Describe the science activity that you selected, choose 3 modalities, give a rationale for why each modality was selected and how you will teach it, and then make sure that you tie it into research and theory. A little later on in this video, I will show you some examples of some of these activities, and I will also go over some ways that you can adapt some of these if you are in an adaptive or life skills environment. Now we are going to cover the choice board options for social studies. Note that the directions are exactly the same for the social studies choice boards as they are for the science. Let's look at group 1. Group 1, the first option is a culturally responsive teaching and learning activity. So you are going to attend a culturally significant event in the community that you are teaching in. Complete a detailed reflection of what you attended, why you chose that event, and how it will affect your instruction. The second option in group 1 is a virtual field trip. You're going to plan a virtual field trip using Google Earth, an interactive virtual museum, or Skype. The third option is a game. Everything that applies to the science choice board is the same as the social studies, with the exception of the fact that the concepts being taught will be from a social studies unit instead of a science unit. Let's move on to group 2. Group 2, the first choice is an observation. You're going to complete a structured classroom observation in a social studies classroom. Same thing as the science, just that you're going to be doing it in a social studies classroom instead. The second option is a world holiday, festival, or tradition. You're going to create an activity or a celebration of a holiday, festival, or tradition from another country that is significant to someone in your classroom or the area in which you teach, or that aligns with the curriculum in your classroom. The last option in group 2 is design your own idea. So you're going to come up with your own idea to evidence social studies strategies or curriculum supports, or modify a social studies assignment or test. Group 3 option 1, is an interactive notebook or foldable, just like in the science choice boards. So you're going to create an interactive notebook or foldable to help your learners systematically organize social studies content. The second option in group 3 is academic language. So again, just like in the science choice board, you're going to choose content-specific vocabulary for a social studies unit and create a PowerPoint, a Prezi, or another format with pictures to visually represent vocabulary. The last option is a chant or a rhyme. You're going to create a chant, rhyme, or rap to help your learners remember important concepts in a social studies unit. Now let's look at the criteria for the social studies choice boards. Again, same as with the science, if the following criteria is not appropriate for your site, please request supervisor permission prior to submission. Let's look at the criteria for group 1, culturally responsive teaching and learning. You're going to need a signature and a photo of yourself at the event, and then a signature of somebody who was helping to put the event on, the event name and the type, the rationale of why you chose that event, and then the description and reflection of the event, and a connection to what and how this will change your teaching. The second group is in group 1 is the virtual field trip, and you are going to give the location, the purpose for going on the field trip, your worksheet or reflection for students, what attractions you saw while on the virtual field trip, your itinerary for the virtual field trip, and then how to access the website in which you went on the virtual field trip. The last one is the game, and it's exactly like the science standards. Steps on how to play and win, materials, scoring directions, rules, incentive, objective. Choose a learner in your class and describe the modifications to the game to meet their needs. Let's talk about the criteria for group 2. For the observation, it's the same as the science observation, a full class period. Make sure that it's signed and dated by the teacher that you observed. Relate something that the teacher did to one theorist. You're going to use the initial structured classroom observation form on ReggieNet, which I will show you how to access. And then you're going to talk about one standout area from domains 2 and 3, those 2 onstage domains in the Danielson framework. For the second option in group 2, you're going to create a tradition, holiday, or festival activity. You're going to give us a description of that tradition or holiday or festival that you chose, a rationale of why you chose the tradition and activity, and then a description of the activity and the materials needed. And then for the third option, design your own idea, it's going to be exactly like the one in science, in the science choice boards. You're going to choose an appropriate assignment or test, identify which accommodations or modifications you're addressing, modify it to your setting and give support for decisions made, give a justification for choosing the modification, and then provide original and modified copies of the test or assignment. Group 3, interactive notebook or foldable, you're going to have the same criteria in social studies as you did for science, 8 to 10 pages or tabs. Every page needs at least one visual. Make sure that it's concise, paraphrase when necessary, have key concepts, and then also a reasoning or a plan for why you selected those tabs. And then the second option in group 3, academic language, same as for science, 15 words minimum with a picture for each word. One video, PowerPoint, Prezi, etc. Meaningful grouping, so make sure your words that you selected tie into one chapter, topic, section, etc. of your curriculum. Make sure that your presentation is neat and visually appealing and concise, and then give a rationale on the terms that you selected. And then the last option is a chant or rhyme. So it must be original, and you need to include an audio, sound, or a video clip. Lyrics must be typed out. How are you going to teach this? How are you going to introduce it? How are you going to have your students practice it? How are you going to test for retention? So that is the criteria for all of the social studies options for the choice boards. Next, I would like to show you some examples of choice boards. If you go into 252 under ReggieNet and you look at the left-hand side, you're going to click on the tab that says Resources. Inside that Resources tab, there is a folder called Choice Board Activities. When you go ahead and click on that, there are many different examples of some of the different choice board activities. For example, there's an overview in here for an interactive notebook. You can go ahead and go through here and it will give you many different ideas of what you can do for interactive notebooks. If you click on the foldables, it will give you some examples of, what you can do for a foldable.